Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com, and this is episode 69 of Photo Critiques. And in Photo Critiques, people send me in some of their best images, and I critique each shot with suggestions on how they can improve it. And today, I'm pleased to critique the work of Shawn Fryar. Shawn sent me in 10 images, 5 of them are black and white and 5 of them in color. Let's get started on this first one. I'm not sure what you'd call this, some type of temple. As I look at it, it looks like there's some offerings here. I don't know where it is. It's a very interesting shot. I think this one would have been a stronger shot if it was shot horizontally and you didn't include this foreground element. Now I noticed in Shawn's photographs, every single one was shot with a 50mm lens. So he may be limited by his equipment. I think if Shawn had a mid-level zoom lens, a lot of these shots will be stronger, and I'll be talking about that in each shot as we go along. And I think this shot is one of them though. If it was framed horizontally with, zoomed in a little bit more, the emphasis would have been more right on the, I'm going to call it a temple, I'm not sure what else to call it. It would have been a stronger image. I'm going to show you, I'll just crop it real quick. If I bring this up to around there, you could see what I mean. It's I think a very compelling image, and I think it would be stronger, as I mentioned, if we just were a little tighter into this. Now also what I want to add is Shawn used a very, very wide open aperture, f-stop at 2.0, so very limited depth of field. And you can see the stuff in the foreground here is out of focus. It's very soft. And this is a subject where you're detailing what is here, the carvings and the things that are in spewed across in the front. So you'd want very tight focus on the whole thing. So in this case, I would suggest to use more of an f-stop f8, f11, something like that. And you could bring your shutter speed way down. You could bring it down to, you're using a 50mm lens, you could safely go to 1/60th of a second, very easy, and hand hold the shot and get a very, very sharp image. So if you're doing that, you could bring the ISO as low as your camera will go. Most cameras go to 100, some go to 50, some just go to 200, but hopefully, just bring it your ISO as low as you can go, because you want as much detail as possible in this shot. Shot of the elephant too used a very relatively fast shutter speed and a wide open aperture. Usually a shot like this, when you have the environment around it, you're going to want as much in focus as possible, so I would have used a smaller f-stop, again something more like f8, lower ISO as low as it'll go, and again you could then use a slower shutter speed. Compositionally, I like that you don't have the elephant right in the middle. His eye is near the middle, which is okay. The tree in front of him though, you always want an unobscured view of an animal. So if it's a bird on a perch, if it's an elephant in the jungle, you want to see the entire animal with nothing obscuring the view. So work this scene, get in a different position so you can photograph the elephant from a different angle where you didn't have anything in front of it. This too, now where this is I think a perfect example where I think you were limited by your equipment. This is an excellent composition where you're getting the musician, but the background isn't really adding anything, and if anything, it's a little distracting. So this shot definitely you should get in closer, and I would say very close. Get like a head and shoulders shot of the man playing a saxophone, and I think it would have been a super image. Something like that I think is just a tremendous image. So that's where I mentioned I think you're being limited with that 50mm lens. Don't get me wrong, the 50mm lens is a great lens, no distortion, it's a fantastic lens, but consider getting a mid-level zoom, something up to little over 100mm, so you could achieve a shot like this in camera. This shot here, I mentioned many times in the critiques that usually, now remember I said usually, you want a definitive subject in the shot. This image, there's really not a definitive subject. On shots that don't have definitive subject, there is something else that is compelling. Either there's a play going on with colors, so there's some color action going on, or there's textures, or there's shapes, or there's leading lines that are compelling, that catch our eye. And in this instance, we do have some interesting shapes here of this. I guess it's a table, but it's not really dominating the frame, so it's not anything that is that compelling that it's catching our eye. So keep that in mind, especially with street photography. You need something compelling. If it's something that, if you don't have a person in the frame, so an actual subject or a truck or something like that, you're going to want colors, and you're going to interplay of shapes or an interplay of textures. This is a great shot. This is an excellent shot. Just looking down the street, it's as simple as that, but it's got the very nice signs, very well in focused. And this one used a f11, perfect. I think it's perfect. I would have brought the ISO down a little, and in doing that, of course, you would have to use a slower shutter speed, but there's nothing moving in the shot, so you again use the 50mm lens. You could very safely go down to 1/60th of a second. If the lens had vibration reduction, you could go even slower and used a lower ISO. But compositionally, this is a fantastic shot. This shot is very similar to this shot, where there really isn't a definitive subject in the shot. We do have some color here, where we have this colorful, looks like a laundry basket, that is a contrasting color to the green foliage, but it's so diminutive in the shot, so little, that it's not dominating, it's not really catching our eye. So keep that in mind when you're photographing. If you don't really have a interesting play of colors, textures, shapes, leading lines, stuff like that, you're going to want a definitive subject in the shot. This shot, I think here you're probably limited by your lens too. I like what you were going for compositionally with the Buddha down here and the wall, big wall, nice colors, different colors, almost gaudy, but the Buddha itself is not well focused, and the light wasn't doing you any favors here. Since the light was coming harshly from the side, and you have the Buddha so small in the shot, you would want the Buddha to stand out more, so you need the light to hit it more front on, so the Buddha looked more dominant than it really is because of the way the light was hitting it. But because the light is hitting from the side, I think this shot would have been stronger if you zoomed in and just got a shot of the Buddha in perfect focus with the tabletop, and you had the leaves. I think that's the star you showed, the Buddha and the leaves. I think would have been a really strong, compelling picture. So if you couldn't have moved closer and get a focus on it by just getting this top area, then you would use the zoom lens and stood back a little, and I think you would have achieved a shot like that. That way the light would have contributed to the shot coming from the side. This shot I looked at a few times. I think it's a mirror image of somebody working with a torch on something. This shot, there's a couple things. It's called an environmental portrait, first of all, where someone is working in their environment and you're taking their shot, their work or play in the environment. Very interesting composition. This piece of machinery right here being blurry and like that, it's just kind of distracting. It's interfering with us looking at him working. Also, the person in the background with their face being cut off by this, it's a little distracting too. If they were over here looking, we could see them looking, I think would have been a stronger image. So in this one, I think it's a compelling subject and a compelling area. I think if you work this image, it would have been a stronger shot. Also, when you're photographing flames, usually it will come out better if you used a very fast shutter speed. So in this case, you used a slower shutter speed, and the flames look, they're blurry and kind of a glow. If you use a very fast shutter speed with flames, you'll freeze them, and it comes out usually much better. So consider that when you're photographing flames. Fast shutter speed. If you're photographing waterfalls, the water, you usually want to use a slow shutter speed. So keep that in mind. The opposite of a flame is water. And so one is fast, one is slow as far as shutter speed is concerned. So keep that little tip in your head. And I think if you used a really fast shutter speed and work the scene somehow to minimize distractions, particularly this machinery here, also this vignetting over here, this being in the way of this person's face back here. This, very interesting shot from the Star Wars movies. I forgot what they called this, but very interesting. I think here you're being limited by your equipment too. We cut off the, at the ankle here. I think you really need to get this entire machine, statue, I guess, whatever you want to call this, in the frame. So you'd use a wider angle lens and get really close, and you'd shoot more up at it. It would look much more dominant when you use the wide angle lens and got close. It would look very dominant in the frame, very strong. And I think that would have been a stronger image. You still could have got the interesting sky in the shot by doing that. So again, like I mentioned, the 50mm lens hurt you in this instance. Again though, too, I would have used a smaller f-stop, something more like f of 8, so that you guaranteed you had good depth of field on the object. And then of course you'd use a slower shutter speed because of that. I would have brought the ISO to as low as it could go. And most of these shots, you could get away with, or you should use a lower ISO. Just helps make sure that you're going to have enhanced detail in every shot. This is my favorite shot of all the shots. This is an awesome shot. It's just fantastic, awesome. It's like summer of 42 type thing. I love the processing. I love the colors, the muted colors, a leading line going to the bright area. Our eyes always look at a photograph. We'll look at the brightest areas, and this is aided by the leading line of the path, leading us to the bright area of the sun. The only thing I could mention that you should take care of here is it is slightly crooked. This side is a little higher than this side. So if I go over to lens corrections and I just click level, watch, it's just going to move slightly. I'm going to turn it off, on. You can see just a little bit. So I take care of that in post. But other than that, it's a fantastic shot. I'd love to have a shot like this. So that's it, Shawn. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, I think you're just being limited by your equipment. I think you're a fantastic photographer. You have a lot of potential. If you got a different lens, I think your photography would go up to another level right away, because you really have a nice idea on how to compose an image. So thank you very much for sharing your images with us. I'd like to thank everyone who watches all my videos on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. And thank you, those of you that go to my website, read my articles, and watch the videos over there. Thank you. And if you guys have time, if you haven't done so already, if you could go to YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'd really appreciate that. So that's it for this episode. I'll talk to you guys soon.